Thank you, Parma. What a turnout. And let me thank Valley Forge High School for allowing us to use this beautiful venue, Golem for the music, Mayor Marie Gallo, Nikki Antonio, Dan Schwartz for their remarks, and thank Congressman Chris Deluzio for doing a great job in Congress. We all know why we are here, and we are here this evening to make sure that Brian Poindexter wins the primary election on Tuesday. And becomes the next congressman from Ohio, 7th District. Before I get into my remarks, I want to pick up on a point that Brian made, talking about his own background. So let me say a word about my background and tell you why what Brian was saying is so very important. He knows where he is, he knows where he came from, and he knows where he wants to be. And I had a very similar experience. I grew up in a family when my dad came to this country at the age of 17 from Poland to flee poverty, anti-Semitism, never had a nickel in his pocket when he came here. He worked hard his whole life, never made any money. We lived in a 3.5-room, rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn, New York. And what has always stayed with me is the struggles that my family had, my mom and my dad had. They were good parents. But always the economic struggle of not having enough money and the stress that that brought on our family. That's something that is in my gut. I couldn't forget it if I wanted to. And it's a reality that exists today all over this country. And the bottom line is that Brian understands that. And when he gets to Washington, he will remember where he came from, the people that he has worked with, and at a time when we face so many problems, he's going to be there fighting for the people of Ohio and America. So I very much hope that we can elect him. What I want to do this evening is do something very radical for a politician, and that is to tell you the truth. How's that? I know. Hard thing. And there are two truths that I want to go over tonight. One is, and I wish I could tell you otherwise, especially for the young people. I wish I could tell you otherwise. But we are living in an unprecedented and an extraordinarily dangerous moment in American history. That's the bad news. But the good news is, and I'm so proud of this, I have had the opportunity to be in every state in America, and I have spoken to God knows how many people, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people, met people in every state. We are a good people. We have good values. We are a compassionate people, all right? And if we do not allow Trump and his friends to divide us up by the color of our skin or where we were born or what our sexual orientation may be, if we come together as one people, as parents who want the best for their kids, who want the best for their aging parents, who want the best for the environment, if we come together, there is nothing that can stop us. No. It is not Bernie. It is you. I'll do my job. We all have to do our jobs. So let me start off by telling you a little bit about what you're not going to see on TV or hear very often in the halls of Congress. and that is that never before in American history have so few people had so much wealth and so much power. Today, in our country, we have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had before. You remember the Gilded Age? Much worse today. Today, the top 1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 93%. Now, you want to hear something really crazy? You got one man, Elon Musk, who now owns, listen to this, more wealth than the bottom 53% of American households combined. CEOs of large profitable corporations now earn 350 times more than the average worker. People on top have never, ever had it so good. Last year alone, after receiving the largest tax break in history, fewer than 1,000 billionaires in America became $1.5 trillion richer. There aren't too many billionaires in this room, I gather. Over the past 6 years, billionaires in America have more than doubled their wealth. And listen to this. According to the Rand Corporation, not exactly a socialist operation, over the last 50 years, there has been a $79 trillion redistribution of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. So that is one economic reality today. Never before in history have the people on top had so much wealth and so much power. But there is another economic reality that unfortunately many of you are more than aware of. And that is that today 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. Everybody know what living paycheck to paycheck is about. I grew up in a family living paycheck to paycheck. Many of you are experiencing that right now. What does that mean? It means that families are living under enormous stress. Mom or dad have to figure out how they're going to pay the rent, how they're going to pay the mortgage, how they're going to buy groceries, and what happens if somebody gets sick. How are you going to afford to go to the doctor when people have, in some cases, no health insurance or have very large deductibles? And what happens if your car breaks down and you can't get to work and you can't afford $1,000 that the mechanic is going to charge you? And what happens if your landlord raises your rent by 20%? You got to take your kid out of school. Where do you go? And all over America, that is what people are dealing with every single day in the richest country on earth. Millions of our people are desperately struggling just to pay for the basic necessities of life, while the people on top literally do not know what to do with their money. How many bloody yachts do you need? But it's not just the outrage of massive income and wealth inequality. When you look at our economy today, you see more concentration of ownership. While profits on Wall Street and corporate America soar, a handful of giant corporations dominate sector after sector: agriculture, transportation, energy, financial services, you name it. And when you have that kind of concentration of ownership, you got monopolies, you got price fixing, and we end up paying much higher prices than we should. And when we talk about concentration of ownership, do not forget about who owns the media. Who determines what you're going to see on TV tonight? Right now, listen to this, as all of you know, Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world, owns X, formerly Twitter. Jeff Bezos, one of the wealthiest guys on earth, owns the Washington Post and Twitch. Mark Zuckerberg, one of the richest guys on earth, owns Meta, which includes Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, and Threads. Rupert Murdoch, a multi-billionaire. You have heard of Rupert Murdoch. He owns Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post. Another multi-billionaire, Larry Ellison, owns CBS, TikTok. But it's not just income and wealth inequality. And it's not just concentration of ownership and control over the media. In America today, the billionaire class is hell-bent on owning our political system as well. You know, I come from a very small rural state. And in Vermont, in early March, we have town meetings. You got towns of 200, 300, 500 people coming out. And they go to a local town hall and they argue about how much they should spend on the roads, how much they should spend on the schools, et cetera, et cetera. They argue, and then somebody says, all right, how many people, raise your hand if you want this, raise your hand if you want that. And that's what happens. It's called democracy. It's a radical idea that everybody has one vote. But that is not where we are today in our corrupt political system. As a result of the disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, billionaires are legally able to spend as much as they want on political campaigns through their so-called super PACs. In other words, it's not complicated. You're a multi-billionaire, you like that candidate, you want to defeat that candidate, you put a few $100 million into a super PAC, it's coffee money for you. They run ugly 30-second ads and life goes on. You win, you beat your opponents. All right? That is not what men and women fought for when we talk about defending democracy. Then we have our president. We have a president whose values, in my view, are so far removed from where ordinary Americans are. He is a pathological liar. He is an authoritarian who wants more and more power in his own hands. He is somebody who virtually every single day undermines the Constitution of the United States and the rule of law. He is a president who has, in an unprecedented and illegal way, created his own domestic army called ICE. A president who threatens the media and our freedom of speech and assembly, and who literally wants to arrest or imprison political opponents who stand against them. We have a president whose value system is such that he thinks that it's all right to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1%, and then in the same bill throw 15 million Americans off the health care that they have. And then we have a president who several months ago, in the middle of the night, started an unprovoked and illegal and unconstitutional war. A war which has not only led to the deaths of 13 members of our military, but thousands of civilians in Iran, in Lebanon, and elsewhere. And that is why, as soon as possible, we must end this illegal and unconstitutional war. And by the way, this is increasingly becoming a bipartisan issue. You talk to Republicans out there and you ask them that when at a time they can't afford to fill up a tank of gas, when they can't afford food or health care, do they want us spending tens and tens of billions of dollars bombing civilian neighborhoods in the Middle East? And I'll tell you where we are beginning to make just a little bit of progress, simply responding to where the American people are. The American people are saying loudly and clearly no to the war in Iran and no to more military funding for the extremist government of Israel. When we began our effort in the Senate to cut military funding for Israel, we had 11 votes. And then we went up to 27 votes. And a couple of weeks ago, we went up to 40 votes. 80% of the Democratic caucus now understands American taxpayer dollars do not go to fund a government which has committed genocide. But it's not only the militarism of Trump that we've got to worry about. We've got to worry about another issue that I fear is not getting the attention that it deserves. Right now, our billionaire friends, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, Mr. Zuckerberg, Mr. Ellison, and others are spending hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars developing artificial intelligence and robotics. Mr. Bezos himself, just recently, is now working on creating a $100 billion fund to, quote unquote, automate factories in America and abroad. Do you all know what automating factories means? It means ending working class people making a living in manufacturing. That's over if Bezos gets his way. But it is not just manufacturing. We're looking at a moment where there are driverless vehicles all over the country. And if we don't figure this one out, we're going to lose millions of decent paying jobs in transportation. We are very worried about what we're already seeing. Many young kids graduate college and looking to find an entry-level job. Increasingly, it is harder for them to find that job. We're looking at another issue where many young people today are increasingly emotionally hooked on a quote-unquote relationship with an AI bot. And we worry, psychologists worry, about the increased isolation that many of our kids are feeling from other human beings as they spend more and more time on their screen, resulting, by the way, in lower cognitive capabilities, lower reading scores, etc. And then on top of all of that, there's an issue that I just had a meeting on the other day in D.C., and that is you have scientists worried about the existential threat of what happens if AI becomes smarter than human beings and decides no longer to follow human control. Now, we once thought of that as a science fiction movie, right? Well, some of the leading scientists of the world think not. So we got, bottom line there is we got a whole lot of issues that we as a nation have got to deal with. This is tough stuff. But the reason that Brian is running for Congress is that all over America, people increasingly understand. I don't care if you're a conservative Republican or a socialist or a moderate, whatever you may be. They understand that the system today is not working. Trump's ratings, his favorable ratings are declining precipitously, but Democratic Party is also very unpopular. And that is where people are at. They're saying, who the hell is representing me? All right? And that's what this is all about. What we are trying to do, and I want to, after giving you all of this bad news, and my wife always tells me we should hand out Prozac before I speak, mass depression. There is some very good news, and that is, you know, people are looking around them and they're saying, look, I am struggling every day. I'm worried about my kids. I got, you know, my mom who's 85 is going to a nursing home, can't even find the nursing home that treats her with care. Got another parent who's sick, can't afford to go to the doctor, all of that stuff. People increasingly despise Trump. They don't have confidence in the Democratic Party. So what we are trying to do, with I think some success and with Brian's help, what Brian's campaign is about, is build a new political movement in this country. And as I mentioned, we are having very concrete success, and it ain't easy, because we're taking on the most powerful people in the world. Some of you may have recalled that a few months ago in New York City, a guy named Mr. Mondani Zohran took on the Democratic establishment, took on the Republican establishment, took on the President of the United States, took on all of the oligarchs, and there are many in New York City. And you know what he did? He put 90,000 people out on the streets knocking on doors. And I don't care how much money is thrown against you. When you have 90,000 people out knocking on doors, nothing is going to defeat you. And just last month, a young woman who I have known for a long time, she worked on one of my presidential campaigns, Ana Lilia Mejia. She started off from New Jersey. Nobody knew she ran for Congress. Nobody knew who she was, almost completely unknown. She was a labor organizer, a community activist. She put together a strong grassroots campaign. Today, she is the congresswoman from that district. And all over this country, working class people understand that it is imperative that they join a union if they want decent wages and working conditions. And union membership is growing. And in California, right now, unions are leading an effort to tell the billionaire class in California they're going to have to start paying their fair share of taxes. So I think what you're seeing all across this country are people really saying, enough is enough. All right? That in the richest country on earth, we should not have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country. In the richest country on earth, 20% of our seniors should not be having to try to survive on $15,000 a year or less. In the richest country on earth, 800,000 Americans, including many veterans, should not be homeless and sleeping out on the streets. Now, what the ruling class of this country, what the oligarchs want you to believe, and they do it in every way possible. They do it through the media, they do it through politics. Basically, they tell you, look, hey, you know, I know things are tough, but really can't you? We don't have the money to do anything. We just can't do it. I'll tell you one example, just came to my mind because a friend of mine told me this. Just to give you an example. A friend of mine's daughter works in Paris, France, and she recently had a baby, and the baby had some complications, was in an ICU for 2 weeks. Paris, France. Do you know what the bill was for that woman, that family, when they got out? It was zero. France spends 50% of what we spend per capita on health care. We spend $15,000, they spend $7,000 plus. So why in God's name can France provide health care to every man, woman, and child without out-of-pocket expense, spending half as much per capita as we can? If they can do it, we can do it. After spending $15,000 per person, we have a healthcare system that is broken and dysfunctional. 85 million Americans are either uninsured or underinsured. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. You want to hear crazy? 1 out of 4 Americans go to the doctor, they get their prescription, they can't afford to fill it. What do you think happens if you don't take the medicine you should take? You get sicker. If you get sicker, where do you go? You go into the emergency room, which costs the healthcare system an enormous amount of money. We spend less than half of other countries in terms of primary care, disease prevention. How about a system which keeps our people healthy?